Hi all, we finally made it to the end of the term and congratulations to all of us. If you stuck it out and got your work in and completed the class with a fair amount of success, kudos to you. Technically, this is finals week, so technically classes ended last week. Um, and although I'm not required to hang around and teach any longer, I am going to hang around and lurk in the discussions to try to be available to help with any little last minute little details that you have um, with your um, with your capstone project, which is your final exam. Um, I'm going to do two little discussions this week, and they're both optional, and you can do them or you cannot do them. But the first one is this one. The first one is my end of semester speech that I like to give to my students. And so you might as well be subjected to it. As someone who flunked out of college twice before I got it together and got my degrees, I have a fair amount of knowledge about at least what not to do and how not to be successful. And then after over 20 years teaching, I've got a pretty good picture of the average community college student and what that person looks like on average. Now, I don't know your lives nearly as well as I wish I had been able to get to know you, and that's just a downside of online education. But one thing that I know, if you are a typical class, and I suspect you are, for some of you, it is a miracle that you are here at all. Some of you have, some strikes against you. You have things out there in your lives that are trying to interfere with your educational progress, and the fact that you've overcome those enough to make it to class and get your education, that's a miracle for some of you, and I totally respect and honor you, and I am actually in awe of you. I think I've told some of you one of the ways I made my living over the years was I was a church musician for 20 years, an organist and choir director, sometimes both, in various churches around the Los Angeles area. And I got to say to you, and now I've been 20 years a teacher, and I've got to say to you, I have seen more miracles in classrooms than I ever saw in churches. I don't have much use for organized religion any longer, but the miracles keep happening in education. And if you're one of those miracles, and you know it if you are, you should celebrate that and be proud of that. And continue to work that magic, because that's going to change your life and maybe the lives of our nation. Our nation is in deep trouble and we need help, not from sheep who'll repeat whatever they're told and believe whatever they're told to believe, but from clear thinkers who can think for themselves, make decisions, and then act courageously on those decisions. That's what we're trying to turn out here. So a couple of pieces of advice, you can take it or leave it, it's up to you, but again, in my experience in teaching literally tens of thousands of college students, there's a couple of things that have emerged that I think are the most important thing one can have to enable one to be successful. And the first thing is, and you've heard me say this before, if you're going to play to win. And if you're playing to lose, go home and get it together and come back. In my experience, as I've said before, with tens of thousands of college students, my experience tells me about 60% of the students that I deal with on a daily basis are playing the game to lose. They've got a losing strategy and they're going to lose because that's how they're playing the game. So how do you turn that around? Well, I don't know, because I don't know your individual lives, and I don't know if you're in that category. I don't know what it would take for you to turn your life around. But the question to ask yourself, and I ask myself this all the time, Am I playing to win, or am I playing to lose? It takes a fair amount of courage to ask that question, and it takes an even greater amount of courage to answer it. And then if the answer is that I'm playing to lose, then I need to change that up. And how can I change that up, and what needs to happen? And in that case, there are people out there at COD to help. I've never seen a college ever in my career that had more resources to help students turn that around. But I think the first step is, are you playing to win, or are you playing to lose? If you're carrying 17 units and you have a family and you're working 3 jobs, you're playing to lose, and you're probably going to lose. So it's worth your resources while you have the energy to look at it and say, okay, something has to give here. How can I be successful? Because the way my life is going right now, absolutely guaranteed I'm going to lose. And so repeating that old tired process, guarantees losing. And so it's possible to change it. On the other hand, if you're playing to win, continue what you're doing, and you'll win. Typically, in college, just like anything else, you get what you're looking for. If you're looking to lose, you're going to lose. Looking to win, you're going to win. Luckily, in American education, at least for now, you can always come back again. You get redos and do-overs, and you keep coming back. Took me 3 tries. I don't know if that'll be forever in American education. The politicians are jonesing to change things up and make it harder and harder for people to come back again. And in most of the nations in Europe, in fact, you get 1 chance. And if you mess up, you're out, and you get virtually no chance of getting back in again. So I don't know that it will ever get that way in the United States. Probably not. But that's the first thing. Ask yourself, are you playing to win, or are you playing to lose? Not do you intend to win. We all intend to win. But are you playing to win? Do you have a winning strategy, or is your strategy a strategy that allows you, that's going to make you lose, or do you have no strategy at all, which is also a losing strategy? You're adults, and you can figure that out. How you address that issue, I can't tell you, because I don't know your lives well enough, and I don't know what you're capable of and what you're willing to do. But yes, we intend to win, but we're playing to lose. Then I ought to notice that and say, something's wrong here. Something doesn't fit. Something does not have integrity. So that's the first thing. And that's a hard question to ask and a hard one to answer. The second thing is, you always ought to have a plan B. What are you going to do when disaster strikes? Because it will. No doubt about it. Absolutely. That's life. That's how life works. So what would be your plan B if plan A didn't work out? You're going along perfectly on plan A, but something really bad happens, and you switch to plan B and go right on. It happened to me in graduate school. I think I've told you that story. Here's an example. A friend of mine who was a student at COD, actually, got into COD, registered for 17 units, had 2 full-time jobs, and had no plan B. So something happened. I've forgotten what happened, but something happened, and that agenda became impossible. And so instead of having a plan B of saying, well, I'll quit 1 job or I'll drop 1 class, he had no plan B, so he quit altogether. Quit school altogether and hasn't been back. So that was a person who didn't have a plan B and didn't know what to do and panicked and quit. So if you've got a plan B, if you've got some plans about what you might do if and when something happens, because it will, there's no doubt about it. When it happens, what's your response? How are you going to stay on your feet? And what adjustments will you make as a rational, aware adult to stay on track? So if you got a winning strategy And if you got a plan B, you'll be fine. And no worries about you whatsoever, no matter how well or poorly you do in my class. If you have those two things, you'll be totally fine. So the last thing that I like to read to my students is a passage from the poem Ulysses by Tennyson, and I've attached it to the window here, and you can look at the whole text if you want to. Sometimes I read the whole thing. Today I'm just going to read the last lines of it, because I think it speaks really cogently to the way we approach our lives. The story is Ulysses, or Odysseus, from the poem The Odyssey by Homer, and he's been out on his adventures at war, and he's been gone from home a long, long time, and he comes home, and he takes over his kingdom. The story's a little more complicated than that. And he settles down into the role of being the king and ruling the people and so forth. And then after a little while, Ulysses, or Odysseus, gets restless and thinks, well, I've got one more good adventure in me. I need to take off and have one more adventure before I die. And this is his soliloquy to himself, this poem, as he's thinking about this last adventure. Now, there are two ways of approaching this poem. One is that he's actually talking to his sailors and saying, let's go get on the boat and let's go out and adventure again. But that interpretation sometimes is negated by the fact that in the story, Odysseus is the only one who makes it home. All of his sailors die on the trip home. So the more standard interpretation is he's talking to the spirits of his sailors, and the last adventure he's about to take is that he's getting ready to die. It doesn't really matter how one interprets it in terms of the ethos of the poem and what it means. I've been very careful not to inflict my tastes in poetry on you, because I have my own specific tastes. And I didn't want to impose those on you, but I am going to impose this one. This is one of my three very favorite poems, and it's kind of the text of my life. And I'm going to read you just the last stanza of it, remembering what I just told you about Odysseus, or Ulysses. And here he is talking to either the ghosts of his sailors or his actual sailors about to embark upon this last adventure. There lies the port. The vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks, the long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Bonne chance, mes amis. Bye.